Click. Yes.
Okay. Okay. No echo.
Mhm.
Good. Thank you for your patience, all. Okay, well, we will get started. Welcome to the third work group session. We very much appreciate your time and feedback as we're developing the outdoor nature-based rule set. As a reminder, the work group meetings are being live streamed onto our agency's YouTube channel. You are not required to be on camera, but due to the live streaming, we will be reading any comments that come through the chat for people who may be watching this meeting. So again, I appreciate your patience while we're figuring out our technology, and we will get going here. Abby, I'm gonna actually make you co-host and let you do the admin, letting people in if you would. There we go. And there's 2 people waiting. So really quick, we're going to go ahead and go through the meeting agenda. We are going to go ahead and review the group norms, our work group scope and format. Feedback from the last session, which covered supervision, staff-child ratio and group size, the benefit risk assessment, play activities, discussion topics, which are going to be the staff qualifications, director and teacher. We will take a small break, and then we'll have the other discussion topics, which is determining capacity for the OMB program. And really quick, I just want to reintroduce myself as well as the other DELC staff who are present here and supporting this work. My name is Carol Peterson, and I work with the policy unit with Child Care Licensing Division. And I'm the facilitator for these work groups. And with me is Abby Strom, and I will let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abby Strom, and I work with Carol for the Child Care Licensing Division policy team. And I'll pass it over to Ronnie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ronnie Pham. I also work with the CCLD policy team, and I'm going to be taking notes for you today. So I am going to be off camera in the background because I don't want you to think I'm multitasking because I'm taking notes. Thank you.
So both Ronnie and Abby may be popping in and out with follow-up questions or clarification. So don't be surprised if you see them popping in and popping out. We want to make this as inclusive as possible and make sure that we're capturing all of your important information. So with that, we're going to go over our group norms. So like every meeting that we start with, I do think it's important that we start with our group norm discussion. So just as a reminder, we want to allow opportunities for all voices to be heard. We want to take space and make space. We want to remain focused on the scope of the work group. Be open for respectful discussion. Have an open mind and ask clarifying questions to confirm understanding. Encourage and honor individual perspectives and truths. And keep in mind that all experiences are valuable and contribute to our shared understanding. Use the raise hand function or chat for comments. And as I mentioned, Abby will read the comments out since we are live streaming, just so that we can capture everything that has been put in the chat. We want to practice active listening, listen to understand and give time to reflect before responding, and then seek commonality. We may disagree, which is okay, but know that we'll be guided by our shared commitment to this work. So, and just to ground us in the work a little bit more and to go over the work group scope and format, the work group, a community work group, is the first stage of engagement where specific topics will be presented and discussed with all of you. The feedback received helps support the development of a rule language on those specific topics. The feedback that you provide and the suggestions you provide will help guide the possible changes that we are seeking and be able to better form our rulemaking task. As discussed in the previous slide, we will review the feedback received during the work group meeting, and we are going to go ahead and develop proposed rule language based on that feedback. In an attempt to keep within the scope of the work group, if other topics arise, we'll put those items into a parking lot and go ahead and capture those in our notes and bring them back at a later date. So to start our discussion tonight, we're going to go ahead and review the feedback and follow-up on the following topics: on the supervision, ratios and group size, benefit risk assessment, and risky play activities. And these were all items that we discussed at our last meeting. So in terms of the supervision versus active supervision, what we heard and captured in our meeting notes from you all last meeting is there isn't a difference between active supervision and supervision. The question was, why have two levels of supervision defined in the rules? And the point that you guys brought up was that the level of supervision may depend on the activities and ages and group size of children. So with that, the adjustments that we are proposing to make is we're going to have one definition of supervision. And actually, this is the definition that we use right in the Child Care Center, the Certified Child Care Center rules. So that definition basically combine both of Washington State's definitions of active supervision and their typical supervision. So really it aligns with our existing, those two definitions align with our one supervision definition. So what we're proposing is that the supervision means that the act of caring for a child or group of children. This includes awareness of and responsibility for the ongoing activity of a child. It requires physical presence, knowledge of children's needs, and accountability for their care and well-being. And supervision also requires that caregivers be near and have ready access to children to intervene when needed. Supervision requires children have the full attention of the required number of staff, and they be within sight and sound without relying on audio or video monitoring devices. So these are the supervision rules, as I mentioned, that come straight out of the OARs, or our Oregon administrative rules for the Certified Child Care Center. So basically, again, the rules state that children have the full attention of the required number of staff at all times, and that staff must be aware of what each child is doing, know and take into account the age of each child, child's individual behaviors, interests, and abilities, the layout of indoor and outdoor space, and any potential hazards or risks from activities children are engaged in. You need to be near enough to children to assist and respond when needed, be within sight and sound without relying on audio or video monitoring devices, not participate in personal activities that could interfere with supervision, such as visitors, phone calls, or electronic device use, and provide supervision when contracted or non-staff persons are with children. And a certified OMB program staff must position themselves or arrange indoor and outdoor equipment to allow supervision of children while playing on all equipment. It's important to note that supervision requirements may look differently based on the activities that children are engaged in, which in turn that may impact proximity of children as well as ratio and group size requirements. These rules also address the feedback from the last session about the staff knowing the children in their group, understanding the children's abilities, and ensuring the staff are strategically moving around and checking on the children in their group. And so I'm hoping that I'm hoping that this aligns with your feedback that you provided, and you're happy with this alteration that we made. Are there any other follow-up suggestions or comments regarding this? Okay. Well, that's a good sign. So we did want to talk about the group size definition and requirements. So we did address group last time, means a specific number of children assigned to a specific staff. And when more than one group of children utilizes an outdoor classroom at the same time, the following apply. Each group is considered separate and operates independently. The group must have its own staff, program materials, and attendance records. And children may not freely move between different groups. Multiple groups can come together briefly for a specific activity, such as eating, napping, large muscle activities, but in general, the groups should remain separate throughout the day. So what are your basic thoughts on the group size definition and requirement? Any thoughts to this?
I have a thought.
Okay.
I mean, it really does seem like you guys have already made a decision to go with 6 for the preschool age kids. So I mean, feedback at this point, really, is there any point in that? I mean, you guys have already made a decision.
No, Joseph, we haven't landed. If you're talking about ratios, we haven't landed on that. We put that out to you in the email. We did ask that you guys come with your suggestions on where adjustments could be made. So we will be addressing that a little bit later in the conversations, but we truly want to go ahead and find out from you what your recommendations for ratios are. So this is
Well, I mean, you know, I've been working with kids outdoors for quite a few years now. I really do feel very comfortable with 8 children by myself. And I know teacher Deanna can handle 8 kids by herself. I've watched her do it. Teacher Leela could handle 8 kids, no problem. If you teach the kids the routines and the kids learn to look to their grown-up as their leader, and they really respond, we don't have any problem with 8 kids. And when you're out in like a public park or a place like that, it's a really good opportunity for children to learn how to depend on their grown-up. And if you start on September 1st, I don't have any problem with 8 kids. They all just troop together.
So Joseph, are you kind of thinking that your suggestion for group size is 8? Is that what you
I would like, I would like, I mean, I forget who it was, but in the previous meeting, one of our participants was talking about every time we make a little rule here and there, it's going to put a real impact on our ability to just stay open at all. you know, and when you drop that ratio down to 1 to 6, I mean, most of the time we are 1 to 5. I mean,
Okay.
most of the time. Today I had a couple absent kids, so we had I forget, like 12 kids and 3 adults.
Okay.
So I mean, I you know, most of the time we are, but that's not what you are saying. That's not what you're saying. You're saying if your inspector shows up on us and I got one adult with 8 kids, you know, we're busted. And I forget what Renee calls that, but she calls it a major finding or something like that. And that's got to go in our little binder permanently for in perpetuity, you know, and that's we're permanently you know, whatever the word is, found.
Right.
And you know, that really hurts us,
And
you know. So one of our teachers has to go, and they something happened at home and they had to run, and you know, I got 8 kids, I'm doing fine, I got no problem.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden inspector shows up and I got to put this permanent thing in my folder, you know.
and I
And
just,
it has a major negative effect on us.
yeah, I just want to let you know that when we presented that information last time, it was just we were floating it out there. Kind of, we took Washington's information and we floated it out there. And when I followed up on Thursday with the emailed information, we are open. It was just our initial kind of floating out. And that's what the community work group is basically structured for, is we got to start someplace. So we're kind of doing our best guess. And so it's an opportunity then for us to present this information to you and then gather your feedback and see where we can make the adjustments. So it sounds to me like, based on what you're saying, is your preferred group size potentially is a 8 to 1 ratio. Is
Yeah.
And how many, so are you thinking how many children in a group then, if you have an 8 to 1 ratio?
Yeah, I don't have that here in front of me. I forget what you guys had it down. Did you guys have 16? Is that where you guys were at?
We've got that a little bit further on in the slides.
Okay.
And so we can talk a little bit more in depth about that when we get to the ratio
Yeah.
section. But I do
Well,
want to just
currently the way we have our recorded program listed is 20 kids is our max.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever had 20 kids. I think 18 is the largest we ever had. I know some of these groups have been bigger over the years.
Mhm.
I like 20. 20 is a good number for me.
Okay, thanks,
I
Joe.
could live with 16. If you go anything below 16, it's gonna hurt us.
Okay, thanks for your input. Mackenzie?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I don't feel comfortable answering my opinion on group size right now with this definition, as I'm not a licensing expert. And so I guess I would need to know, what are the implications of group size besides just the ratio? If we're going to ratio, is there any other implications besides ratios for this definition of group size?
So let's go to, are you talking about like staffing, staff qualifications? Can you clarify a little bit more on what your...
Well, I don't feel comfortable making a decision on this definition of group size.
Okay.
With my understanding of my lack of understanding of how licensing works. So group size, the only reason why it would come up is under ratios. Is that correct?
Right. It's staff to child ratios and group size. So it's how many children you can have in a group.
Of course. Yes, of course. I understand that part, but I'm just trying to find out what the other implications it might be. Approving what group size is without defining the ratio first, I feel like is uncomfortable to me.
Okay.
And so one of the things, for example, multiple groups can come together briefly for a specific activity. I love that they can come together for that. I don't see holiday celebrations. I don't see, those kind of things. So those are areas where we would come together, where mixed age groups would come together. If you look at the pedagogy of forest kindergartens in Norway, a lot of that pedagogy is based on mixed age groups, and a lot of schools in Oregon are based on that as well. Not all of them are. That's not where we started. And so I would encourage, as we look at this group size, what does that mean? And it doesn't allow for that mixed age group or other groups coming together for a guest speaker, for example, or those kind of things beyond just the eating or napping or large muscle activities. But otherwise, I appreciate that you guys are doing, like, matching what the regular facility language is. I appreciate that on the last couple of slides. So thank you.
Yeah. And maybe it would help add some context to the conversation if we go to the ratio slide so that you can kind of visually see. And then we can start the conversation on what you guys would like to see in terms of ratio and group size. How's that? Would that be helpful?
Yes, that's helpful. I just wanted to make sure group size didn't have any other implications besides ratios.
There is the potential that it may for staffing, and depending on what activity. So we'll have to go back, but what we heard with the staff to child ratio and group size is that the proposed ratios are not feasible and would pose barriers to programs obtaining a license. So, and the proposed numbers were prohibited. So the proposed ratios that we started with last meeting, where preschool age was 1 to 6, group size of 16. We split up the younger school age and the older school age, a 1 to 8 with a group size of 20, which means 20 children in a group, and a 1 to 10, and you could have 20 children in a group. With the mixed ages, you would base the ratio and group size at the youngest child in the group. So with that, Joseph, I heard you mention that a 1 to 8 for preschool age children would probably work pretty well for your program. Do others have any input on what ratios they would like to see or what they currently are operating with?
And Carol, I did want to just verbalize some comments in the chat. Rhonda says that I also think that specific children make a difference, but that would have to be a decision made, I think that's supposed to, by the director and staff, training and the activity. I think that when that's in reference to, I think, group size and ratio. And then Rachel said that she supports the 1 to 8 for preschool age children with a group size of 16. And that she could also see a 1 to 6 ratio with a group size of 18. So those are the comments that are in the chat.
Great, thanks, Abby. And Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for revisiting this.
Yeah. I think I got the slides out of order a little bit. My apologies.
No worries. And this makes sense. I just wanted to make sure earlier that I wasn't saying yes to something that licensing. I don't know if like group size affects, I don't know how many bathrooms you have, like, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't saying yes to something I wasn't fully aware of. So thank you. For ratios, I am very concerned, as I've voiced last time, of the breaking up of, breaking these into different categories, especially school age. In Oregon, after school age, it's just a normal ratio of 1 to 15, and under preschool in a regular certified center, it's 1 to 10. And as I brought up last time, I think it's still really important to, remember is that these ratios are based on those buildings And when those students from a certified center go out into a park or out into nature, their ratios still remain the same. So for us to be qualified, our kids to be trained well and to have the proficiency to have those outdoor skills I do think that us being limited is unfortunate. I also understand that you have to balance the risk, and you also have to balance, as the writers of this, you also have to protect our integrity as outdoor, facilities. And I, just don't want anyone with this shingle, anyone hanging their shingle and just letting it, be anyone, with having no skills, and then they're out there with 1 to 10. That doesn't make sense. So I understand that you're in a tricky spot. I am curious about the mixed ages on this side. In a mixed age group, a certified outdoor nature-based program must meet the ratio and group size of the youngest child in the group. I would encourage a lot of pushback on that. Your current rules for registered family licensing, I feel like would be a much better fit in that category. For example, they state that in a registered family home, which is often mixed age groups, which would be more closer to outdoor forest schools. Their ratios are, for those of you who are not aware of this rule, they can have 10 children in their care. We're doing only preschool only, so yada yada. In addition to the 6 children preschool age or younger, you can care for up to 4 school age children. More school age children can be in care if there are fewer than 6 preschool age or younger. I think something like that makes more sense than for all of a sudden we have to meet a 1 to 6 ratio or 1 to 8 ratio for children who are school age. So I would really push back on putting school age all as one category. And I'd also push back on the mixed ages. I feel like it's safer out there with mixed age kids because I know I have proficient leaders, and that's going to be because kids that are highly skilled and at that age is going to be much safer than just preschoolers on their own. And so I would encourage that. I'd also encourage looking at the exact ratios of what you allow for regular field trips, because again, we're going to be much more skilled. Thank you.
So when thinking about that, how would that look for newer programs? Because you did mention, about balancing that anybody putting a shingle out and kind of striking that balance. So how would that look for newer programs or potentially larger outdoor nature-based programs?
That's a great question, but this bill was proposed knowing that you have proficient, incredible teachers throughout the state. And so it was a group of us that came together to propose this and to fulfill a need. And so I'm not sure how you would do a brand new program. I'm not a licensor, but I can tell you I've been in the field for over 20 years. And a lot of other people who have existing recorded programs or have adapted to meet center-based or family programs and have adapted it the best that they can to be outside, they're amazing and they're wonderful. And I feel like a 1 to 6 is way too small. Yeah, I don't see how it would be feasible, economically feasible. And to be honest, looking right here from a financial perspective, if I was to be told that I cannot do a licensed preschool program unless it was a 1 to 6 and I had a mixed age group, I wouldn't allow preschool in because look at the finances.
What if it was a 1 to 8, like Joseph was suggestion?
Again, if it's a mixed age group and you're going to limit me to that 1 to 8 or whatever the lower number is, it's not economically beneficial.
And
So-
so 1 to 10, is that what would be, I guess, what would be the economic, the feasibility?
So if I have a full waiting list and I say we go with the ratios that are in front of us, and I have to go down on the mixed age group portion where it says I have to meet the requirements for the youngest child in the group. So if I have a mixed age group and I have 20 families that I want to sign up and I have to pick which families sign up, I will not be picking preschool ones because I will have a ratio of 1 to 10. And financially, that would be better off for me. Does that make sense from a very financial perspective? And I'm not saying that that's what I'm going to choose to do. I'm going to choose to do what's best for me and the students that I have and to inspire kids to be outside. But I'm saying from a financial perspective, what it is, the whole point of this in Lincoln County is that we are a childcare desert. And we need to open up locations for childcare slots. And we need to be all day for inclusivity and to help working families. And if you're telling me that I can financially do better off because of ratio limits, and I don't get my full 10, say you limit to 10. I don't get my full 10 because I have to go with a 1 to 6. That's financially not in anyone's business plan. The community college at the business center would laugh and say, no, you go with the 10. And so I've done things that aren't, of course, of the norm because I want to help younger generations. But I would say that if you do a mixed age group where it has to meet the requirements of the youngest age, you're not allowing for the ease and the incentive to have younger ages. I would strongly consider that. Thank you.
Rhonda?
I think there's two other things to keep in mind as well. And one is, I'm assuming that going through this process that we're wanting programs to become licensed. And I think if we put too many hurdles in the way, they'll just keep being recorded and then there won't be an oversight. So you have to really consider that piece. The next piece is, I'm sure that you're aware of insurance rates are literally tripling. And if you limit how much somebody can, what income they can bring in, you're going to, I mean, like insurance is crazy right now. So you have to be able to make as much as you can to be able to pay for the insurance. And I'm assuming that everybody has insurance. I don't know if that's a requirement that you guys are going to have or how that works, but I know I have, a lot of insurance, and the quote I got today was $15,000 a year. So that's pretty huge.
Right. Yeah, insurance, we do not require that programs get insurance.
Yeah, I have three different sites, so that's all kind of part of it, but it's literally tripled. And
Wow.
because I have Preschool Promise, I do have those rate the amounts that they require. But you want people to have insurance. You want people to do all the things that they should be doing. And if the more barriers we put in the way, the less programs there's going to be. And so like Mackenzie was saying, they're in a childcare desert. We want people to do things and do things right and be regulated. And so we just have to be careful of the hurdles that you put in front of them so that there is safety concerns are all met, but also that people can make a living.
Correct. Kendall?
Yeah, I just wanted to input. You asked about new programs a little while back and how that could be implemented. And so I just wanted to share that I am a very new program. This is the end of my second year in business. And so last year it was just my partner and I. And so when we opened as a recorded program, we technically could take 20. However, to be honest, we didn't feel comfortable with a 1-to-10 ratio. So we did a 1-to-7. And that worked out really well. I did feel really comfortable with that. All of my students are preschool age 3 to 5. So I'm not a mixed aged group program. And so I'm not sure that I have any input on how we could do that for whoever was concerned with that. However, I do know that this is also just like a preschool outdoor licensing program. I don't think it's really considering mixed ages quite yet. But so anyway, I did really feel comfortable with the 1-to-7. This year we did go down to 1-to-5. We saw that was kind of where like Washington, Colorado were going with the 1-to-6 and 1-to-5. And so we were kind of like, let's try that out. And to be honest, it is way safer. We do feel like a lot of the kids are getting more one-on-one attention. And so I do think it's nice to have the 1-to-5 or 1-to-6 ratio. I know it does seem really like a lot for people. If you're used to having mixed ages and stuff, but if they're all 3 years old, like 5 3-year-olds to yourself is a lot sometimes. And I just think it's like, I do think it's good. The only thing that I have a question about is if it's a 1-to-5 ratio. I forget what the numbers are. Sorry, where the slides are, but like the total group number didn't necessarily meet the ratio numbers last week or last time we met.
Right.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Right.
And so I just like that to me is confusing, like why that wouldn't like line up, And so if the numbers are 1-to-5, if you have 4 teachers, you should be able to have 20 kids. Or if it's 1-to-6 and you have 4 teachers, it should be 24 kids. Or like, I just think that is the group, is the ratio. You can break into small group is 1 on 5, 1 on 6, 1 on 7, 1 on 10. So that's like my only input is like, can we change maybe the overall group size to match a ratio? Otherwise, like you're kind of shortening yourself like 2 kids in one of the groups, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
So,
Good input, Kendall. Thank you.
mhm.
And Abby, I think you probably have some comments to read.
There are several in the chat. Amy says that our outdoor preschool kindergarten currently has a 1-to-6 and that Amy supports the 1-to-8 ratio, as I could see that could also work well. Rachel follows up with, we currently have 16 children with 3 staff at a ratio of about 1 to 5.3333. The math, doesn't quite work on that one. But that she personally feels that or doesn't feel like a 1-to-10 is ideal for the outdoors. Mackenzie added that it looks like preschool at 1-to-8, school age at 1-to-12, and a mixed age group of 1-to-12 with 6 slots of preschool and under. So I think Mackenzie is really trying to model from how registered family looks, and then with a group size of 20. And then Rachel just had the comment too, just about the massive cost of insurance, and that their policy for $2 million of liability policy is currently $150 a month. And even though that Delk may not require insurance, the city park where we are located does. So that's another consideration that is that there may be requirements for the space that you're using. So good call out there, Rachel.
Thank you.
Hey, I asked a question in the chat and you probably just skipped it. But there was a question about, what do you do if it's a new program? I mean, yeah, okay, me and Mackenzie have been doing this for years and we're professionals, but how do we know about a new program, And I do think that Mackenzie did respond to that actually. But I asked in the chat, well, what do you do with a new family program? I mean, some of these families are opening brand new licensed programs in their households. You know, they got their outdoor yards. They're taking the kids to the park sometimes too.
Mhm.
What are you doing for them? I mean, if you're asking, how do we know a brand new outdoor preschool is going to have Mackenzie's level of professionalism? Well, how do you know a new family program is going to have our level of professionalism?
Ronnie, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Joseph, I am grabbing the chats and putting them in the notes so that they go in just like that. And I'm a little concerned that I didn't see your chat. So, did you push enter? Because I need to copy it and put it in the notes. And the question that you said you put in the chat and asked, I didn't see it. Can you help me out with that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's in my settings or something. Can you see any of the other things that I've written in the chat? Am I just blanked out from the whole chat?
I don't know. I'm looking at the meeting chat and
In
I
my
just,
settings?
yeah, I don't see anything in there from you, Joseph. I just want to make sure I'm not missing your words to add to the notes.
I wonder what I'm doing wrong.
And then where it says, there's a
Who
little
can see
blue
your
box
message?
there's a little blue box that says, are you sending it to everyone or just to somebody in specific?
Oh, I sent it to Rhonda.
Rhonda, you got my notes. So if you can change that switch to everyone, then we will see it. I am so sorry that it felt like we were ignoring you and we're not. So we just, I need,
All right,
okay.
so I have
It's
to
okay.
go.
It's okay, Joseph. We probably won't be able to get those, but if we can just make sure we get them forward, I'd be really pleased.
All right, I'm
Thank you for
only-
letting me interrupt everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
Okay, I wonder what I'm doing wrong. Oh, it says to Rhonda. Okay. Oh, to everyone.
So there, yeah, is there the can you see the everyone?
Yeah, I did it, but should I just retype all the things that I've written?
I don't think I think it's okay because you talked about it and I was typing
Yeah,
as you were talking, so I think we're okay.
mainly I'm just praising Mackenzie. Sorry. But I asked the question, how does it look for a new family program? And then the other stuff is just me thinking. All right, I think we're good. I fixed it to everyone. If I chat again, you'll get it. Thanks.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I would like to kind of take us back now to some of the group size conversation that we started with. So I'm just gonna go back one. So again, this is from Washington State. So we're not set on anything. We're just floating out some concepts right now. So Washington's rules do require each group be staffed by at least 2 qualified staff members who are not aides or volunteers. But every 3rd staff member counted in the ratio may be an aide or volunteer. So basically, they have to staff with 2 teachers at all times. So basically, we were just wondering, what are your thoughts on this? And what recommendations do you have?
Well, I mean, it's a lot like what I said before. Most of the time, this is what we do anyway. So this is definitely, I would consider it, best practices. It's extremely beneficial to have 2 teachers on staff. On the other hand, I got a teacher calling sick, and I've got a great parent volunteer that is willing to cover. They got the background check, I got an assistant that she might not be teacher qualified, but we know she's going to do a great job today. I'm supposed to call all the families and cancel school today. What if sometimes I've had this situation and I'll call an extra volunteer and I'll get 2 or 3 parents to cover my, teacher Leela was sick quite a bit last month. And, I'll call a couple extra parents to cover and we'll have a great day and we'll make it through. But according to this, I'm just supposed to cancel school. I'm supposed to call all the families and say, school's canceled today. We have something called, I forget what it's called, Child Care Oregon or something. It's like some kind of substitute teacher program.
Mhm.
Last time I checked, there's 0 teachers.
Mhm.
And I do have a couple substitute teachers of my own that I've been using, and they're close to teacher qualified. I've been making them take the trainings and everything, but I think that the way this is written right now, you're basically telling me that we got to cancel school. And if if I cancel school, it creates a domino effect. And parents start thinking that we're not really a dependable program.
Mhm.
It can really spiral.
Right.
Again, I would go back to what Mackenzie keeps asking. What does a license program have to do to both professionals on staff have to be teacher qualified? Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, great. I think Ronnie, did you get that? I'm assuming she did.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, thank you so much.
thank you. Mackenzie?
Yes, I agree. Rachel also wrote in the chat, how is this different than licensed programs? Keep going back to that. Why is this on the areas that we need to be different for child safety and well-being? I understand that, or to set us apart from, just any regular program. I understand that division, but keeping it as similar as possible, I think makes the most sense. I think this definition of group size and staffing is a fantastic in an ideal world. However, that's what I would think everyone would strive for, is multiple teachers, really low ratios. I think low ratios are wonderful. However, someone calls out sick, someone is on vacation, someone's attending a professional development during the week. I don't think that having two, because the definition of teacher for centers are different than what I would call a teacher. Your requirements with the star rating system and all of that is different. What I would seek out in a teacher. And so I think, and then my other question would be, so I think it's okay to have a teacher and an aide. I think that's completely acceptable, as long as that teacher is, competent and all of those things, which they should be. My other question is, what happens when you drop below a low ratio? So for example, if you have a program during winter break and most families are traveling and your staff wants to travel, can you still be open during winter break to provide that care for the child care desert that we've talked about? But can we do it on a small ratio when there's one staff present, as long as you are, able, right? So if there's a lower ratio, not a 1 to 20, but if you have that lower rate, or I worked in childcare centers in college where you were, the last person as soon as it dropped below 15 or 10, 10 for the preschool age, then you were the last one there and you closed up on your own. And that was a certified center. So is that possible with this definition? And I would say, no, it's not. So ideally, I would love that. I would love to be able to have teachers. We also have a staffing shortage at the coast. I'm sure that's not uncommon throughout rest of Oregon or in pockets of Oregon. I think that would be a huge burden.
Great, thank you, Mackenzie. Amy?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo and agree with what Mackenzie and Joseph said. At our outdoor preschool, we have a certified teacher who's the director and lead instructor. And then the second is not a certified teacher, but is a naturalist, which I think is also important to have in an outdoor school setting. And if one of those two are unavailable, they're sick, their child is sick, and we need a substitute, we have a list of parent volunteers who have completed background checks beginning of the school year, who we then call on. I think if we were to have, if we were required to have a substitute that is eligible to be considered a teacher, that would provide a list of challenges, and would probably cost us more money, and then thereby having to increase our costs of operation. So I would like to, I think it's important to account for that too, and maybe like accepting, you know, so many days a year or something of having a substitute who doesn't meet those licensing requirements.
Thank you. Abby?
There are a couple things in the chat. Rachel says that, and I believe this is in reference to, like what we require for new programs. And Rachel says that staff and license programs are required to complete pretty extensive training, including several safety set trainings. And for those that aren't familiar with that term, it means it's kind of the commonly used term for CPR and first aid, introduction to childcare health and safety, recognizing reporting child abuse, neglect, safe sleep if you are working with infants, and then food handler's card and a couple of other trainings that are required for all staff in licensed centers. That's what the safety set trainings are. So new programs are guaranteed to have at least that. However, there is no substitute for years of experience. And then just that question about why would staff qualifications be different from other licensed facility types? Amy, she spoke to this, just has the comment about having parents that fill in as substitutes when needed, and they are required to have a background check on file. And then Rachel says, yes, that in licensed facilities, you can continue to provide care as long as ratios are met, and that is correct. And then Rachel also just mentions that it might be helpful if Delk would explain to the group what teacher qualifications are in licensed care. And I believe Carol, that's one of Carol's next slides, is about looking at what center qualifications for teachers are.
Exactly. We're gonna be discussing that after our we come back from our break. So I would like to go through one more topic before we do a quick 5-minute break. And this is so this I think is going to be a pretty quick conversation. So when we presented the benefit risk assessment to you, you guys provided us some very valuable feedback. What we heard is that it would be a workable tool for OMB programs with assessing the environment, and it could be a good reference for staff and potential families. That the main suggestion or takeaway was that it be one form per activity rather than addressing each specific item that is located in an OMB program. So example, list tree climbing versus a risk plan for a specific tree. So basically we took that concept and presented it to our rulemaking group, and what we landed on as a proposal is that we would use the template form. It'll be developed and it will be used during like a pre-certification visit, so a pre-licensing visit. It will be needed to be updated when and if any sort of space is added. So that's similar to our practice of a typical childcare, licensed childcare facility, whether it is a certified home or certified center. Somebody wants to add an additional room, additional space, we go in and do a visit. So it will align with that practice. It'll follow just the general framework of the assessment we reviewed at the last meeting, but will be more general in scope. So taking that suggestion of the example listing tree climbing as an activity? What are your steps for tree climbing versus we're going to use the tree at such and such a place and we need to go ahead and assess the tree. Programs will not be able to add additional space without a license or reviewing the benefit risk assessment for the addition first. And again, that's a similar practice to what we do for a standard childcare program. Anytime they want to go ahead and add an additional room, we review the space, we measure, we talk about exiting, we cover all of that. So truly the benefit risk assessment aligns with our existing licensing practice. Yes, Joseph.
I wanted to ask about field trips. You know, like how often can we go on field trips? And if we do go on field trips, then do we have to do this benefit risk assessment for every park we might go to? Can I go to the park every day? Like I want to give an example of why I would say every day. Because June is coming up. And our program started at Forks Park. We've been very blessed in the last couple of years. During COVID, we had to move out of that park. And we're very grateful that we actually do own a 1-acre property in Cave Junction. We were able to, by some kind of miracle, move our entire operation out of the park and into this 1-acre property. But we love Forks Park. It's where we started. We do so great there, and we love taking the kids on the trails. And coming up here in June is the best month to take kids to Forks Park, and I really want to start going there more. We've only gone there like maybe 3 times since New Year's, and I want to start going there a lot more. And actually in June, I would like to pick a week and just go there every day that week. And is that going to be a thing that's going to be regulated? And if it is, are you going to make me do a benefit risk assessment on Forks Park? Because that's a big park.
So our rural group, we haven't really started addressing field trips yet, but so what we'll do is take your information and present it back to the group. But field trips is as far as I can tell, field trips, as long as you follow your policies, procedures, permissions, everything like that. I don't want to overpromise anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not sure that we would need to go in and do a benefit risk assessment for every location for a field trip. Abby, were there a couple?
There is a question. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm gonna scroll back up here. Rachel asked, will other types of licensed childcare be required to complete these forms when playing outside or going on field trips? Just asking for a justification for why or why not. And Mackenzie also would like to hear an answer to that question. And then Rachel says, for consistencies, it seemed like DELT could identify which types of activities require risk-benefit assessment and then implement the form consistently across all license types. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to me. And Mackenzie agrees with that. And Rachel says, yes, keep in mind that outdoor spaces where many of us meet are quite large. So ours is over 3 acres. And Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, but the risk benefit or benefit risk assessment is really for use for what we're going to go over in future slides, kind of what we define as like a permanent outdoor classroom versus all your 3 acres, if that makes sense. So it there at least it's we're going to review kind of like how Washington defines that. again, just to present information. So it wouldn't mean, you know, you'd have to do a risk benefit analysis of 3 acres of land.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and then, yes, and we're gonna go over that, I think after break is really defining what when we talk about like capacity and square footage and things like that. Have an outdoor classroom. It's not a classroom in a typical, oh, sorry, I should read these out loud. So how will you define outdoor classroom? And again, we'll talk about that in a couple more slides. And then what about programs that do not have an outdoor classroom? And again, when we look at what that potentially could look like, hopefully that will, we'll see if that answers your question, Mackenzie. But I will answer the question, just say, the currently licensed programs do not do a risk benefit assessment of this type.
But we do inspect playgrounds to ensure that they're safe and, you know, so that we don't do a benefit risk assessment. We definitely are reviewing safety standards and CPSC, Consumer Protection Safety Commission standards for outdoor play equipment. Likewise, inside, we're doing the assessment as well. So it's not apples to apples, but it's kind of in the same the same scope of work. It's just a little different. So I'd like to give us a 5-minute break. And so if you could all come back in 5 minutes, that would be fabulous. Okay. Well, let's get started again. So before we dive into the staff qualifications and some of the capacity conversations, in the email I sent out, I did go ahead and attach documents that were rules from Washington's risky play activities. And so after reviewing the draft that was sent out in the email, do you have any initial thoughts in terms of how their rules read? And would you recommend any adjustments?
I don't have it in front of me. I just have this slide on risky play activities. Is there anything written that acknowledges the, why risky play? What? I mean, again, I didn't read what the legislature wrote either, or I just heard that it passed. Like, why are we talking about risky play? I mean, you're going to allow it for a reason, right? So, is Delk acknowledging why? What? Because why wouldn't you just say no? You can't do anything risky. That's dangerous. We have to be safe.
But isn't that kind of and maybe it's the terminology. So we could change risky play to like adventure play. But
I'm happy to keep the word risky play. In fact, I prefer it. My question is Delk acknowledging why? That's what I want to know.
why I'm sorry, I'm not following your question, Joseph.
Why is risky played allowed? Why is risky play allowed in the
Isn't
state
it
of
a part of outdoor nature base where you have more challenging activities, different scope of activities, things like that? So
Yes.
when
So-
we allow for that, we have to kind of have some basic rules in place for those activities.
And that's great. And I understand that. And we're going to have that discussion. But is it acknowledged? When this gets finalized, is it going to say what you just said, that risky play is an essential part of an outdoor nature-based program? Risky play benefits children. Risky play makes it easier for children to be safe as they grow older and develop. Is that going to be acknowledged? At the top, I mean, my preference at the top line, right at the very top, when this gets introduced in the regulations, because that's what I would like to see, because this is what I want to argue, and this is what I did argue when I campaigned with all of the rest of us to get this law passed in Salem. It makes the children safer. When you teach children to climb a tree barefoot, when you teach a child to keep their socks dry by splashing in puddles, when you teach a children to run across a field that does not have a fence on the other side, you are actually making the children safer. It is a safer activity. You are improving the safety of that child by doing that. And I want to see, before whatever regulations are going to come up right here, top line, the state of Oregon acknowledges that risky play is an essential activity for outdoor nature-based programs.
Thank you, Joseph. We'll take that back to the group. So in terms of the rules that Washington have regarding the risky play activities, does anybody have any feedback? Do the rules align with how you currently practice in your program, or is there some other adjustments that we could make to the specific activities that would better align?
It's kind of quiet, so I'll talk again. I I think the discussion we had last time was very adequate, and I was basically happy with this. And I understand that we have to write some things here, so I was basically happy. I really like what you wrote here about the children need to be taught basic skills. Um, if we're going to sign a waiver, the way I'm going to do it, I'm just going to put that waiver in the enrollment form in August when the families sign up. And, so that's not really hard to do. Again, supervision, we already talked about. I, I like that you're making an attempt to do the thing I told you guys last time is going to be really hard for you all. You wrote understanding children's skills and abilities is critical because, really, it's all about the personal relationship with the child and knowing the child and understanding what their limits and ability levels are. So I like that you tried to do that because that's not easy. And I'm basically satisfied with all that. I imagine there'll be some pushback, but I heard a lot of silence. So
Okay. Thanks. Amy?
The only thing that I can see that I would like to provide more insight on is the limits on tree climbing, not specifically tree climbing, but climbing natural features. It says, just to kind of let everyone know what I'm reading, at all times, a staff member must be within reach of the midriff of a child who is climbing a natural feature 30 inches above the ground. A climbing child must not be allowed to climb out of reach of staff. And then kind of going back to what is said here is like understanding children's skills and abilities. We have some 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds who are excellent tree climbers and really aware of their bodies and their abilities and their edges and their limits. And we have some, so at the beginning of the school year, yes, we say that we need to be close to support tree climbing. But as the year goes on and we get to know our kids, I don't feel like I need to be close by for some kids who are climbing trees. Other kids, yes, I want to be close by when they're climbing. So we typically have limits at the beginning of the school year, but as we get to know the kids and their abilities and they get to learn how to safely climb a tree and know their abilities, we remove the limits.
Okay.
And I think that just goes back to understanding the children's skills and their abilities. So I don't like putting limits on climbing, and 4 feet isn't very high at all for some kids. My 7-year-old would be very upset if I told him you couldn't climb higher than 4 feet. So I think that I would like for us to figure out another way of saying that, where you can help support new tree climbers, but then allow space for more experienced tree climbers and more experienced program facilitators to allow their kids to continue pushing their edges in a graduated risk-taking way.
Okay. So would you suggest that children develop proficiency first and then you allow them that? And what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I just saw somebody here put our rule is that the branch needs to be the width. Yeah, we do similars. Most of the kids in our program know how to test a branch for safety. So yeah, implementing a way that's like graduated risk taking, where yeah, see, this is where it gets kind of tricky, because how do you regulate tree climbing but
Yeah.
not being yeah.
Exactly. And again, the information that I attached to the email were the Washington's regulations, how they again, just a starting point for us to start these conversations. So I appreciate your input, Amy. That's super helpful. Mackenzie?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Amy was saying about natural features, tree climbing, etc. Any risky play that we do. The word I was looking for last time we met, when Joseph actually brought up trust and relationships with students and having that time with them and how important that is. For me, I feel like it's a very, and I would hope that others agree as well, that it's a very skill-based proficiency. We are assessing, as outdoor educators, we are assessing the children's abilities and skills. So if I have a student who's not so great at climbing, I'm going to have them on a very low branch. I'm not even on a tree, but like one that's low to the ground. They're going to work on balancing and following directions. And then from there, we're going to show them how to test the branches of a tree to make sure that is a safe tree to climb, and teaching them all of those skills and working them through an assessment essentially of proficiency and making sure that their skills are at mastery level before they move on to the next. And that mastery, I can allow children, school-based and or school age and preschool age, to be able to climb large rocks at the jetty, to be able to climb a tree without us exactly right there. The very first things that we ask them to do is to make sure they always have 3 points of contact. But once they've mastered that, they can sit in a tree without us. They're not 20 feet up in the air, but they have showed us that they have balance. They showed that they can communicate with us, all of those skills that we're looking for. Another thing I want to point out, the very last line, that outdoor nature-based programs must always hike with staff in the front and the back of each group. And my question is where's the leadership that we're entrusting these children to grow and learn? I think on trails, hiking, is if you have a very large group of maybe 20 kids, having a staff near the front makes sense. But if it is just, a group of 12 or 15 kids and you're in the middle, I feel like you can navigate that pretty quickly. So these rules, I feel like I would need to sit with them a little bit longer than just less than a week to really go through it. I appreciate you sending them out so we can read them at home, but just looking at these ones, those are some like a major red flags right away.
That's that is exactly what I was going to suggest folks do, is to review the rules that I sent out, and then feel free to email me any suggestions or comments that you might have, or adjustments. We're looking for rule adjustments, or basically adjustments to the rules where it makes sense. So I would appreciate if you could do that. That'd be great. Abby, is there?
Yes, there's a couple things in the chat, and a couple things go back to our previous discussion on the risk-benefit analysis. There's just a couple more comments about just wondering if other types of licensed childcare have to use these forms while on field trips, and just supporting the idea that this type of form be used across license types for potentially risky activities. There are comments about agreeing with Joseph's previous comments and questions just about risky play. And then Rachel said the only conflict that she foresees in the draft is the height requirement might be too low for our current practice. And that Rachel says yes, that they climb higher than 30 inches. And Joseph says that within reach of the midriff, it will not work for their program. And Rachel said that our rule, and I believe someone spoke to this as well, that our rule is that a branch needs to be the width of their thigh. Otherwise, they can climb as high as they felt comfortable. We do not help them climb. So they learn what feels safe to their own body and through their lived experience. And Joseph says that their rule is that their feet have to be twice their height. And that just an observation that there was an indoor program in the county that he noticed that they had recently cut the branches of their trees in their schoolyard. They had cut the branches off in this tree in their schoolyard that was close enough for children to reach. And Rachel's comment is that we need to be careful to not defining ourselves into a corner, taking a more meta view. And she's unclear why we need to have written regulations for these activities at all. For example, when children are learning with scissors, we don't spell out step-by-step protocol. There is an underlying assumption that outdoor nature-based programs are inherently dangerous, and if so, based on what research or experience. Joseph quotes Rachel's comment and then says, thank you, regarding the assumption about the dangers of, or inherently more dangerous outdoor nature-based programs.
Great, thank you for this feedback.
Oh, there's one more regarding tree climbing. This is from Amy. I like the wording used in the tool use section. Instead of a height limit, it's based on child's proficiency.
Okay. So now I do want to move us forward. We're going to start talking about staff qualifications. So again, this is information that was taken from Washington. However, we intersected it with some of the Oregon requirements. So this is for director. So basically, in order to qualify for a director, you have to complete applicable pre-service training, in-service and OMB program policy requirements. So that requirement is equivalent to the CCLD safety set and orientation requirements that Abby spoke to earlier. First aid, CPR, food handlers, the recognizing and reporting child abuse and neglect. Many of those trainings are federally required for providers to take. So we don't have a lot of flexibility on making adjustments to those required trainings. The difference is that our director requirements is that the OMB providers need to have 30 hours or 3 credits of nature-based education training at the time of initial licensure. If you are wanting to be a teacher, serve as a teacher, you need to have 2 years of experience as a teacher of children in any age group enrolled in your program, and at least 6 months experience in administration or management or a department approved plan. Our agency also has a director's plan for folks that don't quite meet the qualifications, and it's a way to go ahead and be able to have you be in place while you're working towards certain requirements. You could serve as a teacher if qualified and have regular duties when 20 or fewer children are on site. And the director may be responsible for only one site. So those last two, actually the last 3 are Washington State's requirements. So I'm just curious, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Okay.
Can everyone hear me? It's Rachel Turner.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, it's a little easier than typing in the chat. So again, my main question would be, why would there be a different set of requirements for outdoor nature-based teachers than other license types? That's unclear to me. I understand if you want to specify experience in an outdoor nature-based setting. I will just say that I'm a little concerned about 30 hours or 3 credits of nature-based education. Currently, there are some options to get nature-based education, but I'm just curious about, does DELC have plans to create their own trainings that would be easily accessible for providers? Otherwise, I'm not sure, like I don't know if I have a master's degree and I've been teaching outdoors for 15 years. I don't know if I would meet that requirement. So I'm just curious about what that would look like. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Rachel. One thing I can say is that we're in the process of developing a library of outdoor nature-based resources and trainings. But you're right, Rachel, they're not readily available. So that's great feedback.
I'm just butting in here. I agree with Rachel that the 30 hours is probably hard for a lot of for a lot of us, but and so I agree with that. I do want to say that the work that Oregon State University's ONREP organization, was it called Oregon Natural? I don't know if I'll get it. Oregon Natural Resources Education Program or something like that. I do really love the work they're doing. They don't offer enough preschool options. I can usually get a preschool class out of those guys about once a year. And then, how many hours is that? I don't even think it's 6 hours of classes. But I do love those guys. And I hope Leanne Mickelson at Oregon State University. They're really great people and I really enjoy their programming. But again, I think Rachel's right. 30 hours is going to be hard for all of us. So another thing that I'm just worried about the way I'm reading this. 2 years of experience as a teacher of children in any age group enrolled in the ONB program. So I mean, I am the director now. I have a master's degree. I have
operating. Joseph,
what?
How long have you been operating?
Well, I mean, 7 years, but I mean, the program doesn't even exist yet because we don't even have a license. So recorded experience. See, I'm
But
in the ONB program. I'm just in the ONB program. Like, so you're saying I do qualify?
We'll go over that later so that you can see where that folds into the comparable group, because we do want to honor in typical licensing, we do honor comparable group as long as it meets certain elements. So that covers the recorded programs, covers all of those end of things. So, but that's a great call out, Joseph, and that's a nice segue into our next slide. But I'm just wondering what are your feelings in terms of the serve as a teacher if qualified and have regular duties when 20 or fewer children are on site? Is that something that is realistic? Is it something that that you guys agree with? Yes, Mackenzie?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So I'm trying to understand this. So some of it is requirements on whether we meet those requirements. So for example, one of those are at the very first bullet point, have we done our sleep safe training? Have we done our background check? Have we done food handlers, etc.? And then the next bullet point is what you would need in order to be qualified as a director. So we would have to have at least 30 hours or 3 credits of nature-based training in our lifetime.
Yes.
Okay, that seems reasonable to me. I think starting out brand new, that would have been hard, but at the same time, should have I been a director starting out, right? So I appreciate there's a delineation. I'm hoping, I do understand that 30 hours is quite a bit, but when you break it down into 2-hour sections, that's only 15 professional development classes. I would push back a little bit on nature-based education training and just making sure that net is very wide, that scope is wide, that it could be wilderness first aid. It could be, information about animals. It could be a class about ecology or foraging. And then also what qualifies for that, would give that. And then the next question I have is so if I'm reading this correctly, have 2 years of experience as a teacher, so that directors would have served as a teacher. And then, and also have some admin time. But then the next bullet point, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th bullet point is serve as a teacher. That's no longer what is required to become a director. That is the ability to be a teacher when you are on site. Is that correct?
Yes, and have regular duties. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I know that that's been really tricky at the coast for licensed care. And that was one reason why a licensed program closed, is the ratio with director not being able to be a teacher. So I appreciate that you're seeing that we are needing that. So thank you for letting directors be able to be service teachers as well. Thank you.
Okay.
I would push back about one site.
Okay.
I would push that because of the way that you're wording field trips and nomadic programs.
Okay.
I would push back. If I had my own land, that makes sense, one classroom, but I would push back on only one site. So thank you.
Would there be a limit to the sites that you would recommend, or no? And how would the director float between the two?
That's a great question. So, what are the current regulations for directors of multiple sites?
Ooh, Mackenzie, I don't have a rule book in front of me.
And I don't know it. I'm not a licensor. I don't know it.
I never quote a rule. That's something I never do, because I'll quote it wrong, guaranteed.
But like I look at like all of the Head Starts that are here in
Right.
Lincoln County, and there's amazing programs in multiple locations. And so I look at that and go, well, could a director serve at 3 sites or 4 sites or more? Why would a director be limited at the director level?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I just butt in again? One thing I know that is the case with a regular indoor license program is our inspector, Renee Bresnay, expects there to be a director on site at all times. And the one loophole there is something called a substitute director. She will let it slide if I'm not on site, if I have somebody who is teacher qualified that's already been designated as a substitute director ahead of time.
Correct. And there's nothing sliding. It's in rule. You need a director or substitute director on site.
Right. So, I just put in the chat that I am the director of 2 different programs. They don't overlap. The recorded program ends at 1 o'clock and the licensed program starts at 1 o'clock, and we're 1 block away from each other and we walk. If that wasn't the case and if we were licensed, maybe our outdoor preschool would go till 3 o'clock, but there might be a reason why our little micro center would still need to stay open right at 1. There'd be 2 hours there where I wouldn't be able to be at both sites. But I don't really see how that's a problem if I've got a substitute director available
Okay.
while I'm at the other site.
That's great feedback. Abby, were there things in the chat?
I think Joseph covered what he was going to say, what he said, and then Mackenzie just wanted to know what the qualifications for teacher are, which are up on the screen. And then I did, in case anybody wants to look this up, I did put in the link to the Oregon Natural Resources Education Program. So Joseph, thanks for calling that as a resource for folks.
So what I'm going to do is move us to this slide. So this
There
is
you go.
a typical childcare teacher qualification requirement. So this is what we require for childcare centers. They need to have at least 750 hours of qualifying teaching experience in a certified childcare center or comparable group care. So Joseph, that's what I was talking about, the comparable group care. 1 year of 15 or that should say or 1,500 hours of qualifying experience in registered or certified family child care, or a step 6 in the Oregon registry, an associate's degree, a CDA. And here's the definition of a comparable group program. So for Oregon's CCLD teacher qualifications, comparable group, we define that as a program which has the following elements: that individuals are supervised by knowledgeable professionals. Training of individuals is provided or required annually. We do not set a limit on what that looks like or how many hours those are. The group size is similar to a certified childcare facility, so that aligns with the recorded programs. Curriculum is age appropriate, and the program is not providing uncertified drop-in care. So it's basically not just a child being dropped off with no sort of pre-visit or anything like that. Okay. So when we go back, again, this is Washington State's lead teacher qualifications requirement. So they require that the teachers be at least 18 years old. They meet the qualifications of a teacher, and that would align with the teacher qualifications that I just went over. Complete pre-service training, and those are the trainings that Abby was speaking to earlier. Have 10 hours or 1 credit of nature-based education training at the time of hire. And when serving as a substitute director, when the director is not on site, have 2 years of experience as a teacher in an OMB program. And so we're just kind of curious about the education and experience of your current staff. Basically kind of what onboarding activities do you offer for your staff?
It's Rachel. I'm sorry if someone has a hand raised, and I just jumped in.
Fine, Rachel.
So currently our staff all have so I have a master's in infant toddler mental health, and then all of our staff has a 2-year early childhood degree currently, and is a step, let's see, I think they're all a step 9 or above on the Oregon registry currently, and there are three staff.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Rachel. And what about onboarding activities? What sort of orientation onboarding activities do you do for your staff?
It's Rachel again. I'm happy to speak to that a little bit. But we have, in the new staff orientation, we fill out the standard form, the new staff orientation form, but we also go over in detail our parent handbook, and we have a staff handbook I'm happy to share it with you at some point. It's around 40 something pages, and it just goes over all of our different policies and procedures. I also personally like to have new hires visit our program and spend a day with us And so that is really helpful just to be in the field and to observe what the different roles are and what they're signing up for.
Yeah. Rachel, would you mind emailing me your employee packet that you have? And we'll keep it internal. We won't share it with anyone. It's just for the rule group to kind of see what people are doing.
Happy to share. Yeah.
Be awesome. And anyone else, if you have something, any of your policies, procedures, or your staff onboarding activities, if you want to email those to me, that would be great, because then I can condense it down and present it to the rest of the members of the group so that they can understand what people are doing for new staffing. So for the others that have not put in their thoughts, does this look like something that would potentially be workable?
I could talk. I mean, everything on here is reasonable. I, I don't see anything that's not reasonable. I do have an answer to your questions, and I'll try to do that for you, but I feel like I want to say something out loud right now that probably is irrelevant. This is really hard. This is really, really hard to do. We do it every year. For example, there's no revenue produced from writing a handbook. We try to we try to rewrite the handbook every year, that doesn't produce revenue. I'm very proud that I can pay our teachers $20 an hour. And I really, now that we have this wage inflation going on, I'm really trying to get everybody up to 22 in September. And that's a math problem that I don't have a good solution to, but by September I will figure it out, because I always do. But you got a teacher with, what do you got here? 10 to 30 hours of nature-based education. You got a teacher with a associate's degree, someone with over 750 hours of experience working with kids. You got somebody who is really moving up the ranks of the steps, getting up to step 7, 8, 9, someone who's really thinking about moving towards their bachelor's degree. Do you have any idea how hard it is to hold on to that teacher? Especially out here in the Illinois Valley. I mean, they're going to move to Ashland next year. Come on. We're going to bust our butts training this person, and they're going to move to Ashland. And that's fine. I'm proud of them. They're moving on. They're going to go to college, and I tell you, we are blessed when we have a teacher stay for 2 years. And teacher Leela, she's finishing up her 3rd year with us, and she gave notice, and this is her last year with us. And we're talking about an absolute brilliant young woman who has really got a big future ahead of her. And we're going to lose her, and that's fine. 3 years, childcare is an entry-level kind of a job, and it's fine. I'm proud of her. I want her to move on and find the joy in her life. But again, it's probably just irrelevant, time wasting. 7:30 is coming up, but I need to say this out loud. It is very, very hard to do this every year. And we have to close everything up to pull this off. This summer we'll close for the last 2 weeks of August to make all this happen. But anyway, you asked, I really want to see what Rachel does too, because I don't think we're as good as she is. I sit down at a table with a new teacher and I go page by page through our little handbook. It sounds like Rachel's got a much better handbook than ours, so I need to read that. But we go through our handbook page by page, and we have the teacher come out and visit the site, and we make sure that we kind of just bullet point foundations of learning, neglect and abuse, pediatric CPR, enroll in the central background registry. We what I forget what health and child health and safety. We bullet point that all out so they can check the boxes one at a time, go down the list, make sure that's all done. I make sure that all of my teachers know they're invited to the different on-rep classes that are scheduled. It's really hard for them to get there. Many of our teachers have children over the years. Forget what else you asked. What does it look like to get a new teacher, right? We have staff meetings. We try to have them every week, but it's really hard. So like about once a month, we have our staff meeting, and I try to include a little bit of training every time. We always sing a song together. I forget what else you asked, Carol.
I think you covered everything, Joseph. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we acknowledge how hard this is and how hard you all work. We are all past licensors, and so we totally get it. We understand. Mackenzie?
Let's see. You were interested in knowing about our staff. So for example, we also have a handbook that we go through and specific policies and procedures for what that position is hired for, and also like overall what we're expecting of all of our employees. So they have an idea of what it looks like and then how they can move up if they are interested. We also include in hiring site visits as well. I think that's really important because outdoor schools are such an unique experience. We want to make sure that that person is understanding what they're committing to, and including going over the gear that is required of them, whether we purchase that for them or a mix of both. I think it's important that they're aware of what elements they'll be working in. When it comes to our staff, we have two main tracks that typically come through, and that's education and education background, but also being an outdoor school. I lead a lot of professional development, and I've led a lot for different organizations. The last place I was at the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and taught lots of teachers and partnered with Western and stuff like that to provide certified training. And so I feel like if I can have someone with a good natural resources background, I can teach them education. And if I have someone who has a strong natural resources background, I can teach or the opposite. If they have a good education background, I can teach them the natural resources component. So those are the two main tracks. I do not believe that a college degree, I strongly believe in college, but I also don't believe that that's the only way to get experience. And so I would rather have someone who is passionate and knowledgeable and willing to brave the elements with me and have a joyful time than someone who's passionate and caring than someone who has a degree. And we have passed up folks with master's degrees based on their lack of passion. And then, alternatively, we have someone who's getting their master's right now, and, she's full of passion and kindness. So those are it doesn't, to me, when I see 2 years of experience as a teacher in an outdoor nature-based program, does that mean that they, is that required to be a teacher for the substitute director? If they're a substitute director, I agree with Joseph. I have staff that have been with me for 7 years, another person who's been with me for 5. When I look at our little county, I've hit the jackpot with those folks. So can I expect that of future employees? And a lot of people who are young and fresh out of college move to the coast, find that they can't raise a family here. And so they move back to the valley or back home, to family. And so I think that the 2 years of experience as a teacher, specifically in an outdoor nature-based program, is a little bit tricky if they're the substitute. And then if you go to the other qualifications that you briefly went to, those are required from the state of Oregon. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so all of these are state of Oregon already required for licensed childcare, But the ones on the previous slide that we were just looking at for a while, those ones are specifically for outdoor nature-based programs that you're adding in addition to these?
Those were from Washington. So those are just our proposal. I just did this so that folks could see the what's required for a childcare center teacher.
Yeah, I feel if you go back, I feel completely comfortable. If I've hired someone as a teacher, then I feel comfortable them as a director, because I would not have them on site unsupervised if I did not feel comfortable in that. This is my program. This is my life and my livelihood. I would not hand it over to anyone. So to have a 2-year experience as my limit, I would push back on that and say, if I have someone who has led tide pooling tours or has served at Head Start, that I can't have them be my substitute director. I think I would push back on that, because I would hold the director position higher, right, at the current level that you are at, but the substitute director have a little bit more forgiveness or leeway.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, so we have 2 minutes left. We didn't get to all of our topics. We had great conversation though. So never fear though, we will go ahead and review the determining capacity at our next final meeting. And we will cover emergency preparedness and capacity at that meeting. And just as a reminder, we're going to go ahead and review all the comments and suggestions that we received today. We're going to develop the proposed rule language incorporating the suggestions when possible. And we will go ahead and present the proposed language at the next work group meeting. This slide didn't get updated. It's going to be June 4th. My apologies for that. And then I will send out the agenda and topic discussion prior to the meeting on the 4th. I will send out the rules again for the rules that spelled out the specific activities, because I do think that there was a request for that to be sent out again, just so that you guys can review that again. And is there anything else that would be of benefit to you to receive prior to next meeting? Okay. Well, thank you again for your time. We very much appreciate your time and expertise as we move forward with this rule set. And Abby, is there anything in the chat that came in?
I think the only thing that we missed was that Amy said that this looks reasonable, and I think that was for teacher qualifications. But just some thank yous for our work. Yeah.
Well, have a good rest of your evening. And please feel free to email me if you have any questions between now and the next meeting, and I'll gladly answer those for you. So take care.